right? And assessment is not new to us, right? So I believe you all know a lot of things about assessment, but the challenge would be, how do I use assessment in my classroom? How do I apply it as an integral process of teaching and learning? Right? More of the using it as a part and parcel of the teaching and learning process to inform my strategies, so that I can do immediate evaluation for the students, so that I can close their learning gap as quickly, as timely as possible. So for today's seminar, I would give you the overview of what assessment is. We are not going into the specific of the assessment because the tools we use have it. But there are many terms floating around, so we need to have some clarity of the terms that we use and what we mean, and perhaps what are some considerations of good assessment design that we can incorporate into our lesson planning. And since this is also anchored as part of the PLC process, I will also show you a video on how we could use certain day-to-day work, homework that we assign to our students or class tests, that we can go into collaborative inquiry during PLC, and at the same time, we could think of strategies and can use it as one of the research lessons. Right? So as what Mr. Lim said, we are making it very practical, doable, manageable for everybody. Right? This is what we intend to do for this 2014. So we had a good start. This is a new year, right? We had a good start. Alright, how many of you cook? Your meals? Yes, wow! Okay, what Mr. Lim? Okay, if you don't cook, do you see chef demonstrating cooking lessons? Yeah. They will usually do this process, right? They will always taste. I have not seen any chef that does a meal without tasting it. Either they taste it themselves, or they get somebody to taste it. Why do they do that? Can I have some of your response? Why do they do that? To improve, alright, whether the soup is too salty or is it too bland, so they can make improvement there and then, right? What else?
It's a quality check.
Quality check, yeah.
Yes, please make sure that it is really presentable to. If I like it, then probably the customer will.
Yeah, thanks for that input. Yeah, maybe I have a certain standard that this is what I want to maintain, and I did some quality check so that when this is served to the guests, I know that this is what they will be getting, right? So let's look at another, let's compare this two picture. The chef is in the kitchen cooking, and now someone is tasting it. So if it's talking about formative or summative, which is which? Perhaps you want to pass around among yourself first?
It's the chef.
Okay, how many of you say this is formative? Okay. How many of you say this is formative?
It depends. It depends on the photo, the background of the photo.
Okay. Mr. Lim has gone one step deeper to say that it all depends. Right. Now, this I think this is quite obvious is formative. Okay. Here, it can be formative, it can be summative. Right. Depends on how it is used. If at home, I said I'm not a cook. So after sometimes after when my family members taste the meal, too salty. I said, no, fine. Put it back. I will go add some water. So it's a formative process. Then I make it better for you, right? So it is how I have used the results, right? It is not the method that determines whether assessment is summative or formative. It is how the results are used to say that this is a formative or summative assessment. Anyone have any question on that? I would like you all to ask questions, to interact, okay, so that this will be more engaging session. There is no silly question. A simple question is actually a powerful question, right? So I encourage you to participate, to ask questions, or to take a input. Any questions on this? So it's not whether this particular test is a formative or summative. It all depends on how the results have been used. What do I mean by this? Okay. Why do we assess in our classroom teaching? We have what we call assessment of learning. Usually assessment of learning could be a point of time. For example, we have our first CA. Do you consider CA as formative or of learning or for learning? I can say this is of learning. If let's say at this point, end of term 1, I want to know how my students have performed in mathematics. I did a check. So this is my summative assessment. But doesn't mean that after the summative assessment, I stop there and don't do anything. If I know that my children has problems with some topics, some concepts, perhaps in term 2, I may want to do some remediation to close the gap. Same for our SA1 examination. It can be at this point of time, it could be a summative. But if the teacher had used the result to inform their teaching and learning, it can be a formative use of a summative results. I think in primary school, the only really summative examination is PSLE. Yeah, because that is a placement examination. That is a cut-off point that as a primary school teacher, if my students obtain 240 points, that means that is 240, right? However, I could use this result to inform my program for next year. But for the child, it's already a summative because it's a placement exam, right? So we are clear on that. Assessment for learning is to identify how our students are taking to our instructions. Just like, I use the analogy of my knee. On Monday, when I walked down the steps, I didn't have a fall or anything. Just suddenly tweaked, and then I tore my meniscus. Okay, because my knee is very weak. I used to be very active sports person. So then, of course, they need to monitor me to see how are you progressing. So you need to monitor, and then the doctor will need to say, what kind of treatment you need. So in the classroom, it's the same. We teach, we have a certain strategies that this will work. Sometimes it works, it's not that you are no good. It works for maybe 60-70% of the students. Another 30% may not be there yet. So we need to do something to help these students close the gap and to be at the current level that they should be. So that will inform our instructions. So it could be diagnostic and follow-up activities. And assessment as learning is involving students in the assessment process. As they assess, they are also learning, right? And usually this will be a self-assessment, peer assessment, right? So in a nutshell, we assess because at a particular point of time, we know what is a performance like, right? As we are teaching, we want to know how our students are taking to our instructions. And we also want children to take ownership of their learning. So we use assessment as learning. Okay? We want our children to be self-directed. Okay? We want them to take ownership, to be able to know where they are, to be reflective. So therefore, we incorporate assessment as learning as part of our teaching strategy. Right? Now let's look at our math framework. This is our 2013 math framework. Right? It did not change much, except that now the emphasis is on reasoning communications. Right? Now, there are 5 components in our math framework. We have the skills and concept. Basically, these are the knowledge. The processes is developing the students' thinking skills and the reasoning skills, as well as our children's ability to monitor, to reflect on their learning. And of course, in the process, we want them to have positive attitude toward mathematics. So, bearing this in mind, right, bearing the framework in mind, as we teach a particular topic, our children begin to achieve what is spelled out in the pamphlet. It's not just only the content, it's also the processes. And now we do emphasis on learning experiences. It's not about students knowing the content per se. It is also developing the habits of mind, of mathematical thinking, and having skills, having reasoning skills, ability to apply, to formulate, to justify their answers. So it's the processes that is just as important as the content. Okay. For a moment, let's reflect on our teaching and learning. In a classroom, we have a syllabus to be delivered to the students, right? I showed that framework. That framework spell all these are the things that we want to see in our students, in our math students. And then we, in the syllabus, we spell out all the topics that need to be taught. So we have the content to deliver. On the other hand, as a teacher, how do I deliver this content? Okay? How should I engage my students? There is time that I need to stand right in front to give you a direct teaching like what I do now. There might be time that I need you to engage in certain activities. There might be time for you to dialogue, to discuss in order to learn. So it all depends on what is the learning objectives, right? And we have the content. The teacher had in mind how students will learn this content. But how do we know the influence? And where they are in the learning, I need to monitor. I need to give feedback. And that's where assessment comes in. So it is this tripartite relationship, the content, the pedagogy, and assessment. I see this as interrelated. It's how we interplay these three components that make our math lesson engaging and effective for our students. And we are here for this purpose, is to help us as teachers to be better at this. In fact, the whole setup, the whole PD setup, as articulated by Mr. Lim, has a lot of components of helping each other, giving feedback to one another so that we improve. When we give feedback to our colleague, is to share with our colleague what we have seen so that the person is more aware. Awareness is the beginning of improving, right? Okay. So we are on this exciting journey of helping each other grow. So not only in our classroom, we adopt assessment for learning. In fact, in this kind of setup, professional development setup, this is actually assessment for learning for ourselves too. Okay. So as well, relative in the classroom, when we want to teach a particular topic, you need to be aware, where am I now? I mean the students, where the students are now. Where do you want your student to go? That means the end point. If you want your students to be able to compare unit fractions, that means they, at the end of your particular period of time, they need to be able to do that. Right? Then, after, as I teach, there will be some who will have certain gaps. Sometimes the gap could be they are not ready yet to learn this. Sometimes it's after you get taught, and yet there are some gaps. How can I close the learning gap? So, at this point, I would like you to engage in some activities. In this activity, I will give each table an envelope. Alright. According to students, there are 7 strategies for assessment for learning. So I have cutouts in this envelope. You arrange them, alright, according to how you think they should be classified. Okay? So remind yourself to sort it out. On this table and can put a table, then yeah, it seems just one table would do. Just for this yeah, all strategies. Okay. Yeah. It is in the catalogs, those statements there, they are the descriptors of what you could do. The strategies. Okay. Teachers, I want to clarify certain point. Alright. These colored ones, alright, they are the headers. Alright. Then all these are strategies, which means to say, when you read this, where am I going up? Which strategy do you think should fall under this? That's what I mean by classify. Okay? Okay, to discuss it. Okay, then you check how many have you got it right? Please for each person. That's definitely for the answer for you to do yourself.
So it designing is more like
also to do a gap. Because you know there's a gap there. more focused lesson now.
Yeah. There isn't.
But you also can be now, because children can get it also. I don't know how you can be. Once and then decided like more focused lesson now.
This example is okay.
What I suggest for learning is always feedback. Always
Well, there should be a flow. It's more like there should be a flow chart somewhere.
Okay, ready for spell check? For the answer?
Right, use example.
Compare your responses to what is stated here by Stiggins and Trappius.
What's the current reality? I read my offer. Currently, when we teach, he also offer. We teach, he also offer.
Where am I going and where am I not?
Okay, each group has all the descriptors that is according to what Stiggins has listed. No need to be in that order, but 1 and 2 can be 2 and 1, doesn't matter. Okay. Which group has
I don't think it matters. I don't think it matters. Because I think these are the three main methods that guide us.
Who has only one that is in, or 2 that is not in the same order as he? Okay, which one was it?
Okay, let's say I have a vision.
Provide students with clear examples where we put it. Where am I now? What is the reason for doing that?
Because we thought that what is good and what is bad, you can roughly estimate where you are.
Okay. What do you think of their rationale for switching lanes, provide students with a clear learning and understandable vision of the learning target to here, where am I now? Number 2, use examples. Okay. Who has the same response as example? Use example. Who has the same response?
It depends on where you're getting from. Because sometimes when we teach, we do use example or models of people's work. We are there now. So I think that in number 2, other than group problem is fine.
I do agree with what God has said, because it's no, although he has fixed it that way, alright, this guru has done it that way. In our, as practitioner, sometimes we do number 2 to let the students know where am I now. Yeah, that's the reason why I decided to put this as an activity, so that you can draw on your practitioner knowledge. You do have knowledge. You draw on your practitioner knowledge, and I give you this supposed to be a model answer. Alright. However, this is from the literature point of view that he has put it as that. But as a practitioner, number 2 sometimes can come under where am I now. Right? But I view his as that he wants to, first of all, I use this very clear. This is the model. I feel that this one will be an English lesson. This is a good essay. Then you know when you are going to write this good essay. However, in mathematics, we normally don't, this is a good solution, right? Yeah, usually in math we don't do that. We will pull up and after that then, oh, where am I now? No solution and so on. So there is some switch there. I'm fine with that. Use examples and Google. Sometimes, where am I now? I may use a counter example to challenge the students so that they know whether the students have achieved that learning objectives or not, or the learning target. Right? This word learning target, I will be explaining later what is learning target. It's more than just learning objectives. Learning objectives sometimes can only be achieved after a few lessons. But learning target is only specifically for that particular lesson. In learning study, right, which the Swedish adopt, they go for the object of learning, the particular object of learning. But since we are using students' assessments idea, we stick to learning target. That means what is it specifically I want my students to learn in this lesson? A few learning targets, I may need a few learning targets in order to achieve a particular learning objectives. Okay? We'll discuss everything. Any others? I thought that's very good. Bringing it up there. Any others? All the rest are okay.
Actually, our group uses number 2 for the third one.
Oh, number 2 for the third one.
How can I close the gap?
Number 2 for how can I close the gap? You would like to share with us your thinking of putting it in number 3? Use examples and models of strong and weak work as how can I close the learning gap?
But to use examples and non-examples in order to make it clear to students, in order for them to close a certain gap in their learning.
Okay. If I to give example, in fractions, this is actually a smartphone, right? So, in fractions, the concept of fraction is that, for example, half. That means one whole is divided into 2 equal parts. So if I use a non-example, I would draw this half, one side bigger than the other. So, using good examples as well as non-example to help them see the difference, the attributes of the concept. Possible. And if they can distinguish that, then the more likelihood they are able to know where they have gone wrong and close the learning gap. Mr. Lee has something to say?
I'm making the ideas later on to something I wanted to share.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Because I see that you have something. Yeah. So, possible. And when you said this, that draws me to this point. Teach student focused revision, which means to say your revision is very focused on certain examples, so that models of strong and weak work can be examples to work on this area. Okay, possible. Okay, good. Thanks for that. Our wishful thoughts. So, when we teach a particular topic, we think in terms of what is the objective that we want them to achieve at the end of it, the outcome. And we also consider where my students are, their readiness level, and how do I close the gap. Alright, closing the gap could be a deficit gap in the sense that they are not ready for learning. How can I help them to be able to assess the current learning? For example, in P4, if they need to learn fraction of a set, if they do not know fractions, what is the concept of fractions? Then how do I close this gap in order that I can move on? Or in the process of teaching, I realize that my students have certain learning gaps. Certain things they are still not clear. Then how could I address it then and then? So that is the three main questions. The three main considerations that we have in mind when we want to design lessons. Right? So in a nutshell, in my class, definitely we usually, even in the banded class, we do have some high progress, some low progress, need more time, some average. So the whole concept of assessment for learning is to help my students move. Those that need more guidance to move, those who are good to also move to the next level of competency, right? And that is the whole idea of what assessment for learning is about. Is how can I help my students to reach the current level of learning? And I use the concept, in fact a lot of assessment for learning use the concept of zone of proximal development, which means to say, this is the level of performance that I want my students to move. They are here. How do I help them move? What gap can I do to form a bridge for them to cross? Sometimes I can use a fellow classmate to support them. Sometimes I can use resources as a stimulus or as a kind of scaffold to help them to assess the learning. Sometimes it's through the way I question to help children able to move on, to proceed, to understand what the new concept is. So a lot of assessment for learning hinges on teachers' ability to provide a scaffold as you plan the lesson. Okay. So at the end of it, we want everybody to move together. We do not want the high progress learners to move here. These are the high progress learners. And then the low progress learners stay there. Actually, it's not stay there. No. If they don't move, by staying there, they are actually going down. Right? If they are at P4 and they are not moving, when they reach P5, the gap is bigger. The very fact that they stay where they are is actually stepping backwards. We care for our students, we want everybody to move. Right? So perhaps they may not be able to move as good as the high progress learners, but at least they are progressing to be able to stay abreast with what they're supposed to work on. Okay? So then how do I know what is my student thinking? Can I open their brain? You can't, right? All the students come here, we hope that there's a cap I can just open and see what's inside. And then put it in, but no. So in order to know students, what students are thinking, knowing, understanding, and competency, what do you think we should do? Okay, we test them. How do you test them?
Either using some formal form of assessment.
Okay, so you test them, actually it could be writing. Good. What else when you test them? Oral, I can ask you questions, or I see what's the responses. So that means I can ask them to write something, to say something.
Do something.
Or do something. Yeah. So these are the things. Do, say, write, and make something. From what they are doing, what they are saying, you can assess whether they understood or where they are. What is the thinking? What's the level of thinking? Right? And to do that, we have all these products, standard tests, and so on and so forth, conversation. Even a conversation like this can tell us a lot of things about students' learning. Which means to say, in assessment, we have strategies, we have the tools. So if I'm going to use the analogy, the toolbox and the tools, you know, then they have to carry this box of tools with them. So you have the strategy to formally assess. And under strategies, we need to have tools. The tools will help to determine the learning targets. Right? Let me explain a little bit more in the context of assessment of learning. So like CA, SA, class test, these are our strategies. But under strategies, what are the tools? Your item setting, your table of spec, the way you interpret data, all these are your tools. In the literature, some of them they call it modes or types of assessment. Right? Basically, I like to use the word tools because it's more intuitive. We need to have certain tools to help us to do some certain work. We need to have strategies, assessment strategies. Right? Strategy is the one that we employ, but when we have the strategies, we also need to have the tools to help us get the results that we want. Right? So then it's also based on actually these are the principles. When we assess, we don't just write a question like that. We know what is the assessment objectives. Right? It's spelled out in our syllabus guide. Ours is a spiral curriculum. When we are teaching primary 4, we not just only look at primary 4. Perhaps we have to look at primary 3 too, syllabus too, so that we have a sense of what is it that they have learned. And at times, you may even have to go down to primary 2, yeah, to have a feel of, if they have not understood, what is it that, what content or skills that they have not mastered, that I need to close the gap as soon as possible so that they are ready to learn the current syllabus. Okay? Then of course, under national examination, the weightage, there is the various components, the K, the C, and A. I will not go deep go into this in detail because of this. What I want to emphasize is that we have strategies, we have tools. We need to be very clear between what is strategies and what is tools. Right? So for assessment for learning, when we use questions, right, there are many methods that falls under questioning. I can use a strategy of questioning. But in questioning, I can use the tool of concept tool. I can use quiz. I can use KWL. What do you know? What do you want to know? What is it that you want to learn? All these are my tools that I can use. Even thinking aloud. Alright? Journal, 1 minute paper. These are my tools that I can employ under the questioning or evidence of understanding. Right? As this project is a journey, we'll be meeting each other at least I think 8 times, 7 or 8 times. We will not go into detail of this at this moment. This is to give you an overview of what is tools and what is strategies. As you design your lesson, your research lesson, you may want to refer to this and see how it can be incorporated into your lesson. They become part of your lesson. We are not looking at, oh, this is journal. We are not focusing on that. We are focusing more on how the journal is incorporated into your lesson as part of your lesson. Okay. I'm not emphasizing, for example, about concept cartoon. The use of cartoons to give some misconception and some one correct answer and let the children choose. I'm not talking about this strategy. I'm more concerned about how this strategies is used in our classroom. But of course, if you want, if you are interested in certain strategies and you want more professional input on that, we can see how we can help each other on this. For example, in the next session, I'll be giving a half-an-hour seminar on what is peer assessment. Before then, Tracy will, and I work with the PLC team on one lesson that incorporates peer assessment. And then when you watch that video, in order to be prepared for the research lesson, this is part of your learning. Okay? So we'll be working on that. Okay? It's a journey.